A warning on nuclear weapons and an expansion of temporary visas. What the Biden administration handed Donald Trump today. Plus, why a Supreme Court justice name-checked Peanut the squirrel. That's Topping the Hill on NewsNation tonight.
So I won't tell you his name. It might be something like Burgum. He's going to head the Department of Interior, and he's going to be fantastic.
All right, so President-elect Donald Trump dropped the news in his first post-election speech, and today made it official. The expansion of his cabinet continuing with the announcement of the North Dakota governor, Doug Burgum, as his Interior Secretary nomination, and head of what Trump says will be a newly formed National Energy Council. A live look right now this Friday evening in Florida, Mar-a-Lago, where Trump will continue this weekend to attempt to fill out his cabinet. And a live look at the White House right now here in Washington, where today President Biden's outgoing administration made a move of its own. Tonight, the Department of Homeland Security announcing it is nearly doubling the amount of H-2B visas. Those allow foreign workers employment in the United States for up to a year. Hello, good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. Our Bob Cusack and Julia Manchester here tonight with how the Biden White House is trying to get in some last-minute wins that Trump will have to deal with on day one. Corey Lewandowski, senior advisor to the president-elect, joins us live here on The Hill in minutes. But first, to transition headquarters, where we are learning of a high-profile appearance this weekend. Our Robert Sherman is live outside Mar-a-Lago once again for us this evening. Robert?
Hey there, good evening, Blake. And the revolving door here at Mar-a-Lago keeps on spinning as we've learned from his team that House Speaker Mike Johnson is slated to make an appearance here in South Florida and stop by Mar-a-Lago this weekend, capping off a week in which seemingly endless string of all of these appointments have come down, with more coming today. Let's get right into it. For the Secretary of Interior position, the president-elect has made clear he wants North Dakota Doug Burgum to slot into that role. He would be overseeing federal lands as well as natural resources. And the president-elect has made clear that he wants the United States to return to a position of energy dominance. This is what he said at Mar-a-Lago this week. Take a listen.
We're going to slash energy costs. We're going to get your energy bills in half. Might be something like Burgum. He's from North Dakota. He's going to head the Department of Interior, and he's going to be fantastic.
Couple other positions to note here. Stephen Chung will be White House Director of Communications, moving over from the campaign. He also served in the last administration. Sergio Gore will be the Director of Presidential Personnel Office. That'll be responsible for appointing, vetting, recruiting positions all across the federal government. And there's also a lot of interest over the Treasury Secretary position. A couple of names rising to the top. Howard Lutnick, who is also co-chairing the transition team, as well as Scott Bessent, a hedge fund manager. These appointments keep coming rather swiftly, Blake. More as we get it. Back to you.
Our Robert Sherman live for us in Florida once again this evening. Robert, thank you. Joining us now is Corey Lewandowski, a senior advisor to the president-elect, joins us live once again here on The Hill. Corey, thanks for being with us tonight.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
You got it. So let's start with who's going to be and maybe not going to be at Mar-a-Lago this weekend. The House Speaker, Mike Johnson, as you heard Robert say there, at Mar-a-Lago. We asked John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, to be, if he was going to be there, and his team told us there is no announcement. Does John Thune need to be at Mar-a-Lago this weekend? Do you believe he's all in for Trump, and should he be?
Well, he absolutely should be all in for Trump. The reason that Senator Thune is the majority leader and not the minority leader is because Donald Trump went and got his colleagues elected, specifically in Ohio and Pennsylvania, obviously helped in Montana and West Virginia also. So that being said, this is the party of Donald Trump. John Thune knows that. Speaker Mike Johnson knows that, and they have both committed to move the Trump agenda forward. And in the Senate case, that means getting swift hearings for his nominees.
Does he need to be down there at Mar-a-Lago like Mike Johnson is? I mean, Mike Johnson's a steady presence there. This is a new role for John Thune.
Yeah, he doesn't. Listen, there's a lot of activity at Mar-a-Lago right now. I'm sure Senator Thune is welcomed to come to Mar-a-Lago, but he doesn't need to be there. There's a lot of activity that's taking place. The president continues, as he did today, to name senior members of his White House and the cabinet officials. And John is not read in on those things, nor does he need to be. So I think it's perfectly fine. To the senior members of the campaign moving to the White House, I don't think John Thune is part of those discussions, no.
Got it. Okay. You mentioned the cabinet. One of the departments here in Washington is the Department of Education. And Republicans have long tried to eliminate it. Donald Trump made this promise out on the campaign trail. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
We want federal education dollars to follow the student rather than propping up a bloated and radical bureaucracy in Washington, D.C., which is what we're doing now. Ultimately, we want to close the Federal Department of Education, and we're going to do that, and we're going to move it all back into our states.
Corey, as we focus on these cabinet appointments, the head of the Department of Education is one of them. Is it the belief, is it the thinking that Donald Trump will actually nominate someone, or might he not, considering he wants to get rid of the department altogether?
Well, listen, I've been around this business a long time. The one thing I have learned is not to get out in front of President Trump when he's making announcements. So I can tell you that the team continues to take every look at departments which can be consolidated, individuals who can lead these departments. And in the coming days, you'll continue to see additional cabinet secretaries, whether it's the Treasury, the Transportation, the Labor Department. There are still many secretaries to be released, and I don't want to get out in front of anybody.
What's the profile of a Treasury? So Donald Trump has announced much of the national security apparatus, or sort of what fits in that bucket. But he hasn't gone the economic route yet, and obviously the big pick there is Treasury. What's the profile, Corey, of what Donald Trump is looking for?
Well, someone who understands how to make sure our country and our economy is moving again, making sure that we don't have high interest rates, making sure that we are benefiting and valuing the manufacturing here in this country as opposed to overseas. So, what you see in the two candidates are both have extensive experience on Wall Street. Both are recognized as experts in their respective field. I'm talking about Mr. Lutnick and Mr. Bessent. So those two seem to be the two candidates that have the best chance to be the Treasury Secretary. But next week is when the president's team is scheduled to roll out the economic team. That includes the National Economic Advisor, the Council on Economic Advisors, and others. This week was Homeland Security Week, and you've seen that.
Here's what I keyed in on what you just said, Corey, lowering interest rates, because as you know, it was Steve Mnuchin who led to the pick, or who advocated for Jerome Powell. His position comes up in 2026. Donald Trump will have a decision to make there. Is it a requirement, or is it at the top of the list that the next Treasury Secretary will give Donald Trump a selection or a name who will be behind the idea of lowering rates no matter what?
Look, I don't want to say that there's any specific criteria other than the fact that these people work on behalf of the American people and make sure that every American has the opportunity to have more of their own money, which is cutting taxes, lowering spending. That's the criteria to come into the Trump administration. That's what Donald Trump ran on, and that's what he's going to execute on.
Let me leave you with this, Corey. Some news not out of the incoming 47th administration, but President Biden and the 46th. H-2B visas. So those are the visas for temporary foreign workers in the United States to come here for a year. Donald Trump, the numbers went up during the first Trump administration. They stopped during COVID. And today, the Department of Homeland Security said beyond the 66,000 congressionally mandated, another 64,000 will come on top of that. Is it your belief that when Donald Trump enters the White House on January 20th, one of the first things that DHS does is reverse that?
Look, that's a program that people pay for the privilege to come and work here in the United States. They put up money to get an H-2B visa. Donald Trump has always said, we want legal immigration. What I can tell you on day one is that we are going to finish building the border wall. And if you're in this country illegally, you better look out for a guy by the name of Tom Homan, because he's going to track you down if you're a murderer or a rapist or a criminal. And there's going to be a deportation process coming forward that Tom is going to oversee.
This is a legal program, though. Do you think he over the H-2B visas? Do you think he overturns it? What was just done today?
I haven't spoken to the president about that, and I can tell you that legal immigrants will continue to be welcome into this country, but illegal immigration will not.
Okay. Corey Lewandowski, got to leave it there. Thanks for being with us here on the Hill this Friday evening. Appreciate the time, sir. All right, so 66 days until Inauguration Day. Plenty of time for Trump announcements. And as I mentioned, they're the same from the current administration. Joining me now, Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief at TheHill.com. Julia Manchester, national political reporter for TheHill.com. Hello. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
We made it to the end of the week. Not yet. Still a lot to go. What about, Julia, what came out of the White House, or really DHS today? I think it goes to underscore there's still a lot of time left in the Biden administration, and they're going to do some things that will give Donald Trump headaches on day one.
Absolutely. I think you're essentially seeing a race from both of these administrations, one outgoing, one incoming. Donald Trump really trying to get his cabinet into place as soon as possible, wanting to use these recess appointments. But Joe Biden and Democrats really looking to make their mark in the final 2 months. I think it's interesting with those H-2B visas. That's obviously a pretty big deal. Wanting to maybe underscore, double it and underscore the role that immigrants play in this country's economy. It'll be interesting to see how Donald Trump moves forward with that. But also, we've heard a lot of Democratic lawmakers talk about the importance of appointing judges, lower level judges, to federal courts. Obviously, Republicans have done a good job with that in the past. Democrats, though, could have an impact if they appoint more.
Story in TheHill.com. Democrats press Biden to protect executive branch from Trump's return.
There's only so much they can do, but they can put out executive orders. I think the most important thing is nominations, and Schumer's moving a lot of them in the lame duck. There's no doubt about it. But also, they need to get all the money out to implement the infrastructure bill as well as the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act.
Because Republicans will put an end to that.
They could stop it, or at least, there could be legal battles over this. But that's very important. Only a fraction of that money's actually gone out.
Okay. Show the Post came out just a little while ago. Bernie Sanders, and here's what he said. He said, quote, "I look forward to working with the Trump administration on fulfilling his promise to cap credit card interest rates at 10%. What is going on here? I got Bernie Sanders touting Donald Trump in week one of the full transition.
Maybe you've got a little bit of economic populism going on here, in terms of how it's impacting these interest rates. Look, I think you've heard Democrats say in the wake of the election that they need to talk more about things like this, and here you have Bernie Sanders doing just that.
One of the things that has always stuck with me with what you have said on this show is the lobbying in this town around the credit card industry.
Yes.
And how it is through the roof.
Yes.
And there's a lot of folks who would say that would be the end of the credit card industry if that happened.
Yeah.
Buckle up.
Well, buckle up. I mean, there are some ideas that actually Democrats, Harris and Trump agreed on. Don't tax tips. Credit card, okay? However, but the lobbying on this is going to be intense. And listen, on immigration, too, Trump has got to take on the employer community because, as Tom Homan has said, there's going to be workplace raids. So that's going to be something also that does not sit well with industry.
Bob Cusack, Julia Manchester, see you later in the show. Thank you both. Appreciate it. Still to come here from the Hill. The fight over food. Why the Texas State Senate is now pushing it to ban, potentially, or at least listening to it, Kellogg's cereals in schools. Plus, the Food Babe. Maybe you know her by the name The Food Babe. Hello, she joined us live on RFK Jr.'s fight against the food industry. That's on the other side of the break. Also, opening statements begin in the Laken Riley murder trial. We'll have the latest from Georgia. And is Donald Trump planning on deporting Prince Harry for his past drug abuse? There is a group in this town who wants that to happen. They've been pushing for this for quite some time, and they are joining us here on the Hill tonight. Hello and good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is the Hill, the center of politics. We're back in 4 minutes. All right, welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. The nomination of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to lead the Department of Health and Human Services is being portrayed as a battle against the powerful food industry. For example, the New York Times reporting, quote, even something as simple as removing artificial dyes is likely to result in a knockdown battle for the multi-billion-dollar food sector, which is wary of higher manufacturing costs or a dip in sales of products by favored and loyal customers. Now, the food industry is pushing back in ways people might not even realize. Remember this from back in March? when the CEO of Kellogg's suggested Americans eat cereal for dinner, maybe to try to save some money? Well, the battle is now taking shape around this country. For example, this week, the Texas State Senate heard from advocates who are pushing for a ban on Kellogg's cereals in Texas public schools.
Why are foods in Europe different than foods in America, but we have the same companies making it? I don't know the answer to that.
Vani Hari is the founder of Food Babe and True Vani and the New York Times best-selling author of Feeding You Lies. You might know her, might be one of her millions of followers on social media, 2 million on Instagram, for example, where she advocates under the handle The Food Babe. She is calling for a boycott of Kellogg's. Vani, thanks for being with us here on the Hill tonight. Appreciate it. Very nice to speak with you. Tell me about what you're trying to do with Kellogg's, and when you heard about the story in Texas, what went through your mind?
Oh, well, this is just incredible. We have such momentum here. Now, Texas joins 10 other states looking at banning artificial food dyes. This is something that I've been the forefront of a fight for over 10 years. Food companies here in America have been using artificial dyes in their products, but they voluntarily removed them in countries like in Europe, when back in 2007, they found that these dyes affect children negatively. They cause hyperactivity, and they required cigarette-type warning labels on their products. And to avoid those warning labels, American food companies decided to reformulate their products without these artificial dyes for Europe and a lot of other countries, for that matter. And so they were, go ahead.
No, so there is a boycott of Kellogg's, or at least a scene in Kellogg's in Michigan just a couple weeks or so ago. And here's what Kellogg said, because I want to get their statement in. They say, today, more than 85% of the cereal we sell contains no colors from artificial sources. In fact, we continuously innovate new cereals that do not contain colors from artificial sources across our biggest brands, offering a broad choice of nourishing foods for our customers. What would you say to them, to that?
Well, there are 92 million boxes of Fruit Loops sold every year in this country. 18% of American children have had at least one bowl of Fruit Loops this week because it's served in schools. This is something that's got to change. Our American companies cannot use ingredients that are banned and heavily regulated in other countries in the same exact products that they sell overseas. They're using better, safer ingredients in Canada, in all of Europe, in Australia, in India. It's extremely un-American to continue to do this. This is something that's unethical and hypocritical and needs to stop immediately. And that's why people stormed the headquarters in Battle Creek, Michigan last week, and we delivered over 400,000 signatures on a petition demanding that they make this change, and they continue to ignore us.
So you are you were elated when Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was announced the Health and Human Services post. You posted it, for example, on your feeds, a picture of you next to RFK Jr. There's obviously lots of questions on both sides of the aisle, even here, about what he may or may not do over at HHS. Democrats are concerned. For example, here was Congressman Jake Auchincloss on the show yesterday. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
RFK is a quack and a conspiracist, and he has no place near the levers of Health and Human Services. What he obscures is the fact that he substitutes science in place of his own opinions and his own quack theories.
Vani, how would you respond to that and to the concerns around RFK Jr.?
Yeah, I'm sure it was not just his opinion when he won a $2.2 billion case against Monsanto and Roundup, weed killer strongly linked to cancer for the plaintiffs that he was working for. Or I'm sure it was just anti-science, the fact that he believes that we should stop giving subsidies to big ag and GMO factory farms, and we should subsidize regenerative farming, which would dramatically reduce the pesticides being used on our food that's decimating our American health at enormous rates that we have never seen before. Half of the FDA budget is funded by industry. This is the type of corruption that he is going to remove when he is in Washington doing this work.
The HHS is a big portfolio. For example, substance abuse, mental health, they oversee. Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Are you comfortable with him overseeing the entirety of HHS, or do you believe his role should have been more tailored, maybe in a czar-like role?
There are so many people that he is surrounding himself, so the experts in all of these specific areas. It is absolutely incredible to watch. He was at the Senate roundtable that I was at, where we were surrounded by doctors from Johns Hopkins, Harvard, Stanford, and he is taking these people in under his wing, and they're going to help fix the issues of chronic disease in this country. And he's going to look under the covers. He's going to figure out what's been decimating the American health in this at this point where we're literally the bottom of the barrel in terms of health, although we spend the most on healthcare.
I got to leave it there. It's a pleasure to speak with you, Vani Hari, again, New York Times bestselling author. You simply might know her as the Food Babe, with a massive following on social media. Thanks so much for being with us here on The Hill. We'll catch you next time. Thank you.
Anytime. Thank you.
You got it. All right. Still much more ahead. Here from The Hill is the Pentagon preparing to expand its nuclear weapons force. What that could mean for the incoming Trump administration, and what will happen to Prince Harry once Trump is back in the White House. There is a group here in Washington that wants something done about that man right there, and we're talking to them on the other side of the break. Also, don't forget to download the NewsNation app for more on all the big stories and to watch us anytime, anywhere. The Hill, back and forth. Welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. A murder trial in the state of Georgia has become a symbolic flashpoint in the country's border debate. Jose Ibarra facing charges in the killing of nursing student Laken Riley in February. The trial kicked off today. Our NewsNation national correspondent Alex Capriello has the very latest out of the Southeast tonight. Alex?
Yeah, a very powerful day of witness testimony, the first day of Jose Ibarra's bench trial here in Athens, Georgia. We heard, beginning with those opening statements from both the prosecution and the defense. For the prosecution, it was outlining all the evidence that they've been able to gather over the last 9 or so months since Laken Riley's body was found near a running trail here at the University of Georgia. For the defense, it almost seems like a mountain that's too high to climb because there just seems to be so much direct evidence. From the prosecution's standpoint, they found what they believe to be Jose Ibarra's DNA underneath Laken Riley's fingernails, also a fingerprint on her cell phone. Prosecutions say it's his fingerprint after he was trying to hang up that 911 phone call that she was trying to make for help. So powerful was this testimony that at several occasions we had to see the family actually leave the courtroom, their emotions becoming too overwhelming. We have a soundbite from earlier today when the prosecution was outlining what they believe to be the best evidence and why they say that the defendant, Jose Ibarra, was a predator who was out there actually looking for victims. Take a listen.
Jose Ibarra put on a black hat, a hoodie-style jacket, and some black kitchen-style disposable gloves, and he went hunting for females on the University of Georgia's campus.
And Blake, as you know, ever since this crime occurred back in February, as you put it, it's been a lightning rod for so much discussion about immigration reform in America, specifically the Laken Riley Act, which has passed the House almost within a month after that crime was committed, but has stalled so far in the Senate. Blake?
Alex Capriello, live for us in Athens, Georgia this evening. Alex, thank you. Meantime, tonight, a warning about the need for the U.S. to increase its stockpile of nuclear weapons. There are 9 countries all around the world with more than 12,000 nuclear weapons. The Wall Street Journal is reporting the Biden administration recommending an increase in U.S. nuclear capabilities to deter threats by Russia, China, and North Korea. Our NewsNation Washington correspondent Kelly Meyer is here with the latest. Kelly, the timing just before the transition here with the administrations. It's like they're handing this one over to the Trump administration.
Right. Quite a hefty pass-off to the incoming administration. And Biden even just today, as he's in Peru for the APEC summit, saying North Korea, a warning of North Korea's dangerous destabilizing cooperation with Russia. So the Pentagon, according to this new reporting from the Wall Street Journal, saying that they are preparing options to deploy more nuclear warheads should those efforts prove insufficient. They declassified the report on the nuclear employment guidance that was sent over to Congress today. It doesn't outline specific options under consideration, but it does note that it quote, may be necessary to adapt current U.S. nuclear force capability, posture, composition, or size to deal with, quote, multiple adversaries who are making nuclear weapons more central to their national security strategies. The decision on whether to deploy more nuclear weapons, that's left to the incoming administration. Now, Trump in the past has said he might use nuclear weapons and has questioned why we would make them if we weren't to use them. He was open to nuking Europe because it's a big place, he said, and it's important to be unpredictable with nuclear weapons. That was all from 2016, but this is what he said in September. Take a listen.
To me, we have one really major threat. That's called nuclear weapons. We have other countries that are hostile to us. They don't have to be hostile to us. I always say if you have a smart president, you'll never have a problem with China, Russia, or any of them.
So we'll see how he handles this, going forward, but it's definitely passing this off to the next one.
It's fascinating you use the word unpredictable because when you talk to people around Donald Trump, they say, why would he ever lay out what he's going to do? Why would you ever lay the roadmap out? It's all part of his sort of negotiating tactic and how he handles things.
Exactly.
Kelly Meyer, live for us tonight. Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate it. This doesn't necessarily fit into the traditional bucket of foreign policy, but the election of Donald Trump might have consequences for Prince Harry. Now, the former royal could end up in another legal battle involving his U.S. immigration status after he openly admitted to using illegal drugs in his best-selling memoir, Spare. Earlier this year, the Heritage Foundation sued the Department of Homeland Security for access to the Duke of Sussex's visa records. The Heritage Foundation lost that lawsuit in September under the Biden administration, citing Prince Harry is entitled to his privacy. Now, Trump weighed in on this during the campaign, saying, quote, we'll have to see if they know something about the drugs, and if he lied, they'll have to take appropriate action. Now there are reports that Prince Harry and his wife, Meghan Markle, bought a house in Portugal as a quote-unquote emergency escape solution ahead of Trump's return to the White House. Now Gardner is the director of the Heritage Foundation's Margaret Thatcher Center and has been pursuing this issue for quite some time. Joins me live. Hello, sir.
Great to see you, Blake.
Thanks for being with us. Are you going to bring this lawsuit back?
Well, we will be calling on the Trump administration to release Prince Harry's immigration records. The Biden administration has refused to do that.
They cited privacy. Why would Trump do it if Biden cited privacy?
Well, Prince Harry is one of the most public figures in the world, and he wrote in his own memoir about illegal drug use, extensive illegal drug use. He should be held to account. And President Trump has spoken in the past about the need to take appropriate action if Harry lied. So I do hope that the new Trump presidency will release Prince Harry's immigration records for the American people to see for themselves what is exactly in those records.
Are you guys just trying to tee Trump up? Because we know that there wasn't necessarily Trump loved the Queen and held her in high esteem, obviously. Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, when there was the state banquet, they didn't attend, right? So there's some friction there. There's some tension there, Niall. You know it. I know it. Are you guys just trying to tee Trump up to go after Prince Harry if he wants?
Well, I think that...
Or the administration?
I think that, firstly, President Trump is a huge supporter of the special relationship. He greatly admires the British royal family, the British monarchy. And also, at the same time, he believes in enforcing U.S. immigration law in the security of America's borders. That's a top priority for him. Prince Harry should be treated differently to anybody else, actually. There should be no special preferential treatment given to Prince Harry. He should be treated in exactly the same way as anyone else applying to the United States. Yet his application, his immigration records, are shrouded in complete secrecy. The Biden administration fought tooth and nail to protect Prince Harry's immigration records. We have to ask why that is the case. And the interest of transparency and accountability and the rule of law, those records should be released to the American people.
I was reading the code. It said it references, quote, a drug abuser or an addict is deportable. Isn't it a gray area between drug usage and your organization or anybody else saying, well, that makes you an addict?
Well, let's see what's in Prince Harry's application. We simply do not know. And if someone lies on their application, that is a criminal offense. And any individual who has lied on a U.S. immigration application would be subject to deportation. So certainly the stakes are very high here for Prince Harry. He's probably a very nervous man right now. But we want to see U.S. immigration law applied equally and fairly to everyone who applies to the United States. That includes Prince Harry, who has outlined in great detail his own illegal drug use. He should be held to account. And if there's nothing to hide, I think Prince Harry should support the release of his own records.
So the Heritage Foundation is here in Washington, conservative group. It's been out in the news a lot. Folks have probably heard the name. I was on your website. Here's the mission: providing solutions, mobilizing conservatives, and training leaders. How does this fit into any of that? There's probably people listening to this, Niall, saying, you're wasting your time. What are you doing?
Well, we're not wasting our time. The Heritage Foundation, of course, is the leading force in Washington for the firm application of U.S. immigration law for secure borders. And so we've been a leader in this area for many, many decades. And we believe that no one should be above the law, that there should be accountability and transparency here. Okay. And the Biden administration has provided zero accountability and transparency. That has to end, really.
So let me leave you with this, because I'm not sure I heard you off the top. You're going to bring the lawsuit back?
Well, we're appealing the judge's decision. Okay. And we will be calling on the new U.S. administration to release Prince Harry's immigration records to the American people.
All right. Got to leave it there. Niall Gardner. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much,
Appreciate
Blake.
the time. All right. Still to come here on the Hill, how will the issue of trans athletes and DEI play out under a Trump administration? And what the Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch said about the popular internet sensation Peanut the Squirrel. Yes, the Supreme Court Justice weighing in on Peanut. What he said, the reporting from the Hill. Full panel after the break.
The GOP will take control of the House of Representatives. NewsNation once again has called it first. Unlike a lot of other outlets, NewsNation has no preference in the outcome as long as it is accurate and fair.
All right, welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. So is the Supreme Court siding with Peanut the Squirrel? Justice Neil Gorsuch using the story as an example of government overreach during a talk at a Federalist Society dinner last night, as reported in thehill.com, as you can see there. Now, Peanut, as you might know, was an Instagram famous squirrel that entered the political fray in the weeks before the election when it was seized and euthanized by New York State over rabies fears. Peanut's owner joined Cuomo earlier this week.
You made a 10-month investigation for a squirrel and a raccoon? We have murderers and rapists running the streets, and they don't get investigations like this. We are filing a very big lawsuit. We're going to get answers, and we're going to demand them. Not only did you violate my constitutional rights, but you need to come up with an explanation as to why you murdered these animals.
All right, full panel with me now. Samantha Dravis, former official in the Trump administration. Bob Cusack, you know him, editor-in-chief of thehill.com. Julia Manchester, national political reporter for thehill.com. And Chris Hahn, NewsNation political contributor, former senior aide to Senator Chuck Schumer. Hello to you all. Happy Friday. That's where we start on a story that has gone viral for lots of reasons now. Chris, and let me start with you, too, because you're both lawyers by trade.
Yes.
The point from Justice Gorsuch was essentially, this is government overreach, and he's weighed in on this.
Why didn't he give this squirrel clemency when he had a chance? First of all, as you all know, I prefer animals over people. Right?
I do know that.
I am shocked that they would take this squirrel. And she told me in the green room they chopped his head off.
I didn't even know.
Oh, you told me. I didn't even know how he died. Now I know. I'm appalled by the whole situation. Yeah. This squirrel wasn't doing anything wrong, and they killed it for no reason.
So are you siding with the conservative justice?
I am siding with Gorsuch. It might be surprising to you all, but I think that they should have spared that squirrel's life.
Well, I don't think they had a chance. The government came in and gave the squirrel the guillotine before anybody could look the other way.
Even though they had guillotines that small.
Well,
would they use a scar cutter?
I don't know. You have to ask the New York DEQ. But I think it's an example not just of government overreach, but of government focusing on the wrong things, as the owner pointed out. You've got, this heavy-handed government intervention to come after a squirrel that's not bothering anybody, and yet the people see that crime's not under control in the cities, and we've got a border crisis and all these other problems that government seems to be ignoring. It's bad optics.
I guess. I mean, there's a dead squirrel. That's all I care about.
And now a Supreme Court justice.
We shouldn't be taking innocent squirrels and kill. Look, if there's a problem, there's a permit that needed to be filed for the squirrel. Give them the permit. You're going to kill the squirrel. What is the point of trying to save the life of the animal if you're going to just kill it? I hate that. All
right, Supreme Court Justice weighing in on it. Meantime, over to the battle involving transgender athletes in women's sports. A major issue in the presidential campaign and for many around the world. Sebastian Coe the British Olympian, track legend as well, and candidate to be the next head of the International Olympic Committee, now weighing in.
The protection of the female category, for me, is entirely non-negotiable. If you do not protect the female category in sport, then you will lose female sport, women's sport, and that is not something I'm prepared to sit the dance out on.
All right, back here in Washington. Meantime, Democrats continue their postmortems on the success of the GOP strategy, winning the White House, the Senate, and the House by, in many cases, running on the transgender issue and the policies. Axios, for example, reporting Senate Democrats were, quote, flat-footed by the attacks. I don't understand, Julia, how Democrats could be flat-footed by this. Republicans were, let me show a headline in thehill.com from April of 2023. House Republicans passed bill to ban transgender women, girls from school sports teams. Republicans were talking about this for 18 months, if not longer.
They were talking about this, and there was polling to suggest that Democrats could be weak on this issue. I don't think, in the media narrative and, talking to voters, this was necessarily top of mind. So that's where Democrats could have been flat-footed a little bit. But I think there is an internal Democratic debate on how to, move forward on this issue. Seth Moulton has spoken out against this. His chief of staff has since resigned. He's gotten pushback from Tufts University, for example. So this is something they're going to have to figure out the messaging on.
To Julia's point, Bob, Seth Moulton has basically come out and has said, and I'm paraphrasing here, as a father with girls, Democrats, what are we doing? And he caught grief for it.
He did.
And he basically said, see, you're proving my point.
Yeah. And I interviewed him for an event we had this week, and he said Democrats really need to look in the mirror. This is not something you just say, oh, well, it was kind of close. It wasn't close.
Right.
And that's where Democrats, as Julia says, they have to decide prioritization. And one of Trump's best campaign commercials was, she's for they, them, and I'm for you.
That ran nonstop.
I think the tagline was good. I don't think that the issue was what drove voters. I think that tagline, though, did drive voters.
Yeah.
But I don't think the transgender issue is why people voted, right? It was a question of who is she fighting for.
Right.
And that was the tagline, and I thought it was a very effective tagline. I think that the Harris campaign waited way too long to engage on that ad.
Yes.
Mostly because of that tagline. But as for, transgender sports, even the governor of Utah, a very conservative state, vetoed a bill that would have banned transgender students from participating in sports. Why? Because there aren't that many of them, and the ones that are not really changing the game.
But for every one of those, can't I give you a Seth Moulton or Republican saying and just average folks saying,
I doubt what Seth Moulton was saying is actually accurate about the election. I do not think it moved that many voters. I really don't.
Well, it may not have been as big an issue as the economy or immigration, but I think it's common sense, Chris. And you had 70% of voters saying they did not believe that biological males should be able to participate against women in sports. You can just watch these videos of the women in the Olympics getting punched.
But that was a woman punching another woman. Right? So that's the thing. It's not actually happening. This is why, we have to be reality-based in our politics, and I don't think we all think.
I think Democrats can keep that up. I don't think it's going to work very well for them.
Well, it was a woman that punched another woman in the Olympics. Can we agree on that fact?
I don't think we agree on that.
But it is the fact.
I think at the end of the day, this is it's part of a broader cultural narrative and how Democrats and the left are talking to voters, talking to people. And I think voters feel that with some of these issues, like the transgender issues surrounding the transgender community, they feel like they are being spoken at and not spoken with.
Well, that's part of the problem. The real problem is, how come Democrats can't talk to working class voters? What has happened? Okay. We have to figure that out. If we figure that out, because our issues are better for working class voters, but we're not communicating it.
The issue of immigration and the economy, voters clearly said, I don't want to relitigate it because the election's over.
Right.
Voters clearly said they thought his policies were better than hers.
They thought it, and Democrats didn't articulate their policies right.
Okay. And Republicans won if you make $30,000 a year to $100,000. They dominated that.
If you look at the popular vote, it was basically America under $100,000.
Yes.
Of how it went for Trump terror. All right, meantime, coming up this Sunday, Chris Steyerwalt hosts the best Sunday show in the biz. That is The Hill Sunday here on NewsNation. Chris will be talking to the outgoing independent senator from West Virginia. Wow, good interview there, Joe Manchin, and the Republican senator from Wisconsin, Ron Johnson. Here's a preview of what Manchin had to say.
President Trump is going to be my president, the 47th president. I want him to succeed. And I want him to do it within the confines of our Constitution. When we take the oath to protect and defend, I want him to be able to do it. So it's going to be good for our citizens throughout the country in West Virginia. But when I think it's going to be harmful, I think there might be something he should consider, I'd be able to talk to him about it.
All right. Be sure to watch The Hill Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern. Chris Darrell right here on News Nation. Other side of the break, Leland Vittert joining me, and there is some news out of Mar-a-Lago. We'll have it. We're back in a few. Stay with us.
Remarkable women from across the country. 125 trailblazers will be honored with a chance to win $25,000 for the nonprofit of their choice. Nominations open through December 20th. Go to newsnationnow.com to enter a remarkable woman today.
All right, welcome back to the Hill on News Nation. Some news out of Mar-a-Lago just a little while ago as Donald Trump announced that Caroline Levitt will serve as the White House press secretary. Leland Vittert, host of On Balance, joins me live. Leland, this is interesting for a couple reasons. Donald Trump is obviously the star, the main character, the executive producer, and everything that he's involved with. But early on, you know, the cameras will be focused on her in the briefing room and the podium, and she'll be one of the big faces of the administration. For the folks at home, you know this, I know this. The way, when you look at the podium, right behind it is lower press, what we call. And then you go up from lower press, and it's upper press. And it's actually not too far from the Oval Office, right?
The studio is bigger than lower and upper press combined.
And Caroline, I first met Caroline when I was covering the White House, and she sat there in lower press, right next to the podium. And it's one of those so close, but yet so far. And I don't know. I just think of Caroline tonight, whether you think she'll do a great job, bad job, whatever. The fact that she was there, stood by Trump, she was a big supporter of his, and now she gets the podium going forward.
Donald Trump is many things. He values loyalty to him above all. People can argue whether or not he shows loyalty back. Some have found that he does. Some have found that he does not. But when it comes to picking people, and I think especially in this second administration, loyalty to him, demonstrated loyalty over a long period of time, which Caroline Levitt certainly has done in spades, is a currency he values almost above anything else.
Yep, and in upper press, Stephen Chung used to sit there, and now he gets the big office as the communications director.
And look, I think what this shows is that Donald Trump feels that Caroline articulates the message of MAGA that he once articulated. Right. And that is a very specific brand that she brings and that he once presented.